How you guys doing? This is Andrew from FloryPB. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're not fully restoring this, but this is an Angel GATT. The GATT, it was called. And what this really is, this is a custom, or not a custom, but a private label 06 speed. And we're going to get a little bit of the history of it. I'm going to break this down fully. I'm actually selling this to a friend of mine. So the gun's in very good shape, but I want to break it down fully and make sure I'm giving him the best possible thing I can give him. Now this is a very cool marker. They're sort of hard to come by. They did make a good amount of these, but they're not exactly in the same quantities as some of the other Angels you can get from this generation. But it was based off an 06 speed platform, which if you remember from Angel, you had the A4 Fly really started Angels with eyes. That was back in 04. Then they went ahead and they made the 05 Speed that had eyes, and the G7 came out after that. Then the G7 Fly came out, and the 06 Speed came out around the same time as the G7 Fly. Now what made this marker interesting was it was private label. First Call Paintball, they actually had these made for them, and they changed a couple things. It came stock. This one's actually in very good stock condition. It's harder to find these with all the stock parts on them. But they came with a di-ultralight barrel, which is hard to find because if you see the threading here, any 06 Speed, GATT, or G7 Fly has this bastard threading, where it's not an A1 thread, is not an old Angel thread, it's its own thread. There's only a limited amount of barrels for them, so you got to really find them when you can. So they came with di-ultralight barrel stock. They came with this feed neck, which it's a Chinese kind of jobber, but it's a clamping feed neck that's not a big twist feed neck, a twist lock like the Angel feed necks at the time. So it's kind of nice. It's very light for what it is. And it came with check-it unimounts, which I've never been particularly... I never liked check-it unimounts. I didn't understand what the whole craze was about them. I think they're kind of shitty, actually, but people loved them. It was a cool thing to have, and the marker came stock with one, which was kind of nice from an Angel. Really interesting with that. And you know, it's an 06 Speed outside of that, but it's milled down. It's very light. It was the lightest Angel of that generation, or probably the lightest Angel ever, coming from a factory until the A1 came out. If you ever had a chance to shoot a G7 platform Angel, this was pretty much the pinnacle of what Angels were. The A1s were definitely a huge step backwards in the comfort of them and just everything, really. And a lot of stuff you see on this marker is stuff that you see kind of coming back into vogue now, and people are finding them popular again. It's very spaced out kind of feeling, like it's a very good spacing on it. These 45 frames are probably some of my favorite frames ever. And this started debuting on like the 05 Speed, and just this is one of probably the best 45 frame feels that, in my opinion, that there is. And the trigger, you know, we were doing the sight triggers for a long time, but we're starting to see these blade triggers, or these rate triggers, coming back. You see like the brand new Eclipse guns are coming out with these. The DSR has one of these triggers on it now. So it's starting to come back in style. And yeah, it's just a lightened version of an 06 Speed. Nothing else is really crazy about it, but it's just a good Angel. It shoots phenomenal. G7s, this whole platform, 06 Speed and G7s, are the best shooters, in my personal opinion, of the Angels. They fixed their breech problem, basically. Alright, we're back. Sorry about that. Had a little camera issue. Ran out of battery with that. But I just realized when I was looking down at it that I wasn't recording. So this is the generation that fixed the Roto-breech. Technically, it was definitely a step in the right direction with the Roto-breech. And what they did is they introduced this cam lever here, which what it does is it pushes, when you lock it, by twisting it that way, it pushes the hammer forward, which pushes the bolt forward. And this little gap that you get, because you have the feed neck threads and the Roto-breech, it pushes the bolt to fill up that gap, so you don't get those rollback issues that plagued earlier Angels, especially with force feed loaders and stuff. Sometimes it's a pain in the neck to get this back, so it's not ideal. The cam doesn't ratchet back, but that would be a much harder thing to do. But it's definitely a step in the right direction. The one thing I didn't like about this particularly was this is never super tight, because there's no more pin like the original Roto-breech had a pin that slid through to keep it tighter, there's nothing keeping this in besides the bolt being in this breech here. So this interaction is kind of sloppy. And you feel a good amount of air coming out of here. It's never perfect. We're going to tighten this down and make it as good as we can, but it's never... Angels, in essence, they've never been great at any of this, keeping air in and being as efficient as possible because of the Roto-breech. But this one, these kind of exemplify the problem worse. And the other thing about it is, if you ever see someone like pressing down on this, if you press down on this and force it down when you're shooting, you can gain a fairly significant feet per second gain from that, like 20, 30 feet per second easily. I remember doing that once myself, just testing it out and seeing how it does, and you can get a decent amount of extra feet per second out, which is kind of dangerous when you're crawling at 300, and then if you're not even thinking about putting your thumb up here, you're going to gain feet per second. Might have been built that way on purpose, but I don't know. So we took the barrel off, we're going to take the grip frame off, and we're going to just break the thing down and start breaking it down. It's an Angel, so it's mostly going to be metric threads. This stuff's all still standard threads though. Third time's a charm. We can get rid of this awful drop forward before we give it to them. And just give them basically a bone stock Angel GATT. Angel fittings. I've always admired their air fittings. Their air fittings are great compared to some of the other stock crappy fittings. You always got real big O-ring in there. Real hard to get in and out, get off, you know, the macro line, but that's actually a good thing. So now we're going to put the standard Allen keys away and switch over to our metric sets. I want to unplug the eyes and get all this stuff disconnected. And really just even get the frame off. We're going to wash everything down. If you guys seen my LCD rebuild video, I was a little more in-depth on the processes that we use to do this. And I'm going to use the same stuff. I'm just not going to put the bath up here or put the little supersonic cleaner up here to do. I'm just going to bring it to my supersonic cleaner. Just because it's a hassle, and to see the same thing over and over again really doesn't help. Gently remove the wires. You have 2 for the switch, 2 for the solenoid. The eye wires are always very delicate because they're these ribbon cables. So I always get rid of the other stuff first, then gently pry the eye wires up. Again, we're going to clean the grips. It's always nice to clean the grips, so we'll take the other side off even though you really don't have to. So, I mean, it's a little strange how these were set up this way. I mean, my personal opinion is it probably would have been smarter to have this grip be the one where you could change the battery and do all that stuff from. Just because your lever's over here, you're working with your Roto-breech over here. I don't know, it just makes sense, I guess. To me, but it might not make sense to everybody. Let's lose the battery. I'm going to pop the frame off. We need our 3mm wrench. Make sure you hold the frame when you do this. Another thing that bugged me about this generation of Angels, especially the speeds, gotta actually check, see if the G7s, I don't even remember, but there's no hole here so you can put your Allen key through, which used to be a nice touch on the older Angels that they kind of broke away from for sake of making it cheaper. Well, it is the speed, so it's supposed to be a little cheaper. So, frame's off. I want to pull the board out. Got to grab a screwdriver. Just a Phillips head screw on these. You gotta watch the interaction with the trigger. And the buttons. Alright. So, now you see all the little pieces that go along with it. Nothing crazy, that just goes in the back of the frame. You know, just be conscious to put it in the correct way. Obviously that's upside down, you can see the little A. And that's all the rebuild. We'll wash this stuff down. Put the board off to the side for the items that we don't need to deal with. And this is another thing I loved. I loved Angel triggers from this generation. They were really snappy. It had a breakaway magnet as well as a repulsion magnet. So there's a couple different magnets you could deal with. I've always been a fan of getting rid of that and just having the breakaway magnet. I've always felt it was a snappier pull. I know a lot of people didn't like the Opti sensor. They didn't have a micro switch, so you didn't hear that nice click. But these frames were so easy to get going. It was so easy with the thumb wheel to set them the way you want it. The G7 Flies and 06 Speeds, they got rid of the front thumb wheel. The older A4s to the G7s, they had a double thumb wheel setup where they one in the front, one in the back. It was a little more adjustable. And also just how they put the trigger in. There is no play in these Angel triggers. There's no side to side. If you press on any trigger on any other marker, you're going to feel a little bit of side to side play. The way they put this together, it was just very, very nice. And at the time, you know, it was a semi-league that you played in 06. Semi was still big. So you needed these kind of things. And it was just a very nice feeling trigger. A little too small there. Need my number 2. My 2mm. So just 2 screws up top. And your pin's out. Sits in a nice roller bearing. And it's a tight fit. This is the kind of fit that you expect this to be. It's an interference fit. It's nice. It doesn't come out easy. And that's what you want, is a beautiful fit to the roller bearing. Roller bearing still feels smooth, and it just clamps in. It was a perfect solution. You're not beating the shit out of the side of your marker with an Allen key and a hammer or some crap like that. It just comes out nice and elegant. It's super tight, and it's super just responsive, and the correct way to do a trigger. It was a beautiful trigger in these generations. Next, we're going to pull the eye covers off. There's definitely a big thing with the eye covers. Put the frame off to the side. Use our number 2 again. Gotta check what the detents look like. A little tight, that one. Now, Angels have sprung detents. Every Angel to, you know, up into the G7s, they had a sprung detent, which I prefer that style personally. There's no replacing anything. Just don't lose the parts. Get our spring. Get the detent that basically can never wear out. You have a spring that's not going to wear out. And it's just an indestructible setup. Just don't lose it. Pop the other side. It gets out of the way, so when the bolt goes forward, it actually slips out of the way. The ball doesn't have to push past it. I just prefer this style. Even though I know that didn't really stick around in paintball. So both detent covers, springs, detents are out. So now we got to pry off the eye covers, which isn't too bad. You grab my pick. I don't have my pick. Hold on a second. Always nice to have a little pick if you need it. These should just pry up. They can be a little brittle when they get older though. So it's something, be careful. You don't want to lose one of these tabs or else you basically lose your eye cover. And these are going to be very difficult to find replacements for going forward. Which is one unfortunate thing about any Angel that came from the factory with eyes. Until like the A1. So this eye's already pretty loose, which is wonderful. Usually when they're caked on, that's when you start getting scared with them. Good, this one's loose too. So you can gently come on, Bubby. There we go. Gently get it out. You want to be very gentle with these. See, it goes underneath this setup here, the veneer wheel. So just pull the wheel up. The little metal bracket, the tin bracket that got folded over, goes below it. This feels like someone actually glued it down, so I'm very, gotta be very careful with this one. Shouldn't be glued down really, but there we go. A little sticky, something's on it. Those eyes look good, we'll double check them. That's not ideal, but we'll see how it's doing. Nothing looks broken, make sure they work. Alright, so next we're going to take off the reg. The unfortunate part about the G7, just like the unfortunate part about any Angel previously to it, they didn't really update the reg. The reg looks different, it's harder to put a replacement on, but it's still the same piece of shit mini reg inside of here. Except now there's no true way to get the fucking thing off. So I have these pliers here. These are parallel jawed pliers, and I just dipped them in Plasti Dip in order to make a non-marring surface. And it's just a gentle game of getting this off without hearing, you start cracking the anodize and hear that crunchy sound. Alright. Just a shame what they did with this rag. I'll show this off in a little bit. These are number 3. Take the velocity screw out. Oh, baby. Sometimes they like to come out, sometimes they don't. Make sure we're not forgetting a screw. We are. You have the number 2 screw right here in the front. Or the 2mm set screw. Holding this thing in. I'll gently push down. It does want to move. Yeah, but not that well. Look at that. There we go. And now you have the same damn mini reg that was in essentially almost every Angel going forward with very minor updates. Except there's so much area and they fucked up with this one. That's just the way it is. They could have made this so much nicer. Let's get a rag. It's truly a shame. First, let's get this off so the Angel's just the body. Need to go to number 4. Got to hunt for it a little bit, right down the middle. That's why I love these pliers. I had to re-dip those particularly. This is one of my favorite Allen wrenches too, or hex keys. These are made by Wiha or Viha, or however you say it. It's a German company, so that W is probably a V. But if you look at them closely, if I can zoom in on that, it's a very nice cut on the ball end part, and then they put this little, on the bigger Allens, they put this little retention clip in there. And what that clip does is it springs out a little bit, so it holds on to screws nicer. It's better holding on screws. The bigger keys have the bigger clips and they really work better. But it's just a nice feature to have. It helps hold all your screws in place, which is pretty nice. So now we have just the one more for the flash tank or the whole unit. It's also a number 3 or 3mm, just like the frame. So we just have our O-ring seal. We have our pin for our LPR underneath there. But now that's off. Let's pull the whole reg apart. Got to get my C-clip pliers, my jewelers. This set of jewelers pliers I use for this. They're just 2-barreled pliers. They work great at taking off these little C-clips. And yep, make sure I'm not missing any of these. And this is the part that kills me about these regulators. You made this piece here, this housing, and then you put this big ass piece in it. That this, if you had a piston that was this diameter inside this carrier, you're in business. You have a pretty good reg going on. But no, they went back to this shitty little piston, which is so tiny, and the more area you get on this piston, the faster it's going to be able to react, the more force you can build on it. So any decent regulator you see has a big fat piston. And they had the area, they had the room to do it, but they just weren't clever with the way they did this. It was shitty. This was a very bad setup they did here. Now the reg seat's at the bottom. We'll have to push that out if it doesn't want to come out. Just to inspect it, perfect. Yeah, it looks good. That looks good. The ball's fine. We'll clean it up, rebuild it, put some nicer O-rings on it. Just because we can. We'll put all the stuff off to the side here. Nice to keep all the parts together. They are, oh, look at that. That's a little fucking weird. So someone shortened that screw. I hope that's not a factory job. But, you know. Yeah, someone just cut that screw there, and they didn't do a great job at it either. The screw's the right length. Probably. I'll double check that. We're gonna clean this up so it just doesn't look this shitty. There's no real problem with it. It just looks not the way I want it to. That little screw goes with there. That goes there. Frame stuff and body stuff. So, we're not going to pull the feed neck. There is, never mind. It's on loosely, so we'll pull the feed neck. Again, I don't know if this is a Check-It brand or which brand they called this, but it's just some China feed neck. You see the Warrior feed necks and shit like that on Amazon. It's all the same shit. It's fine. It's a clamping feed. There's no real issue with it. The slots are kind of big, but whatever. Technically, big slots are less weight, right? Has a CCM knockoff clamping feed setup on it, but it's just what it is. Basically, it's a bike clamp with an Allen key. I'd like to see a lever, but this time, knowing beggars can't be choosers back then. But yeah, it's just a feed neck. It is very light compared to the Angel one, so it's not a problem with it. There's no real problem. See, that's just the cam action. The cam action, if it just made it come back, which would have been a little tricky, maybe they had to put a magnet or something like that to make it just force it back. That would just made this feel a little nicer, having to stick your finger down there and pop it open. Some gunk got blown up in there. We're going to clean that off. So we'll pull the front, we'll do the back, get everything out, get the thing soaking in my ultrasonic cleaner, and then we'll do a rebuild video coming up after that, and a little bit of tuning. Gonna switch back to the 4mm Allen. Now this side is your valve side, the way it opens up. So there's a spring here. It's going to spring forward. Slightly. Another part I really started liking about the G7s, they started, before this marker, really no one did a true poppet in a mass production that didn't just have a spring sitting in front of the valve stem or the cup seal. So you had this spring and all this interference, you had all this shit in the way of your airflow. The G7 is probably one of the first markers I remember seeing. The G7 and 06 speeds are one of the first markers I remember seeing that they started doing something about this. The spring's encapsulated in this little piece here. If only they could have made this flow a little nicer to make better flow, it would have been better if they would have just smoothed this out so the air could flow over it more freely. But they started doing something about this and they started making it kind of nice. I mean, it was kind of a good idea. This locks in fairly okay, so you get pretty good, get almost like a 2-point setup a little bit to keep the valve straight, or the valve stem straight, which is kind of nice. It was a step in the right direction, definitely. And I think they kind of also took a step back with the A1 valve and then the fucking, the Magnum valve, or Magna, whatever they called that, magnetic one, and I had a buddy that brought over an SB, which had like the D-light valve, which, yeah, I wasn't exactly thrilled where they were going with the rest of them moving forward. So the LPR sits in this chamber, just like any low pressure Angel at that point in time. LPR's Angel is very good, still very good. I'm going to grab my specific tool. Oh, stacks backwards. So it's kind of weird when they switched over to this particular kind, but there's really I have no problems with this spring. I like the little older wave springs probably a little better, but these are fine too. Let's pull out the shims. That one's a little rusty. Look at that. Obviously we'll replace some shims. We'll re-shim this thing the way we need it to, however we want it to shoot. That pin came out fairly easy. That was nice. I'm just going to pull the valve out. Sorry, the LPR body. There's really not much difference between this one and the older gen ones. I don't know why there's so much lube on the back end of that. There's no reason for that either. Not too much of a difference. Everything's basically the same in a low pressure Angel valve as far as these generations went. Don't truly try to take this apart. There's really no reason to if you get reg creep. These ones are a little bit better. The older ones that came on the high pressure Angels, like the IR3s and the LCDs, they were peened over, so the threads were meshed, so you couldn't really take them apart. These you can kind of get apart, but the chances of that seal back there, the actual reg seat being a problem, aren't very high, so normally that's a pretty just good indestructible part for the majority of its life. Take out the second pin. We're not going to try to pull the valve down, we'll just try to push everything through. So start back here and get to the solenoid. Got to use our 2.5mm wrench. Another problem with Angels, I feel like they could have streamlined some of the wrenches that they were using. They do use a lot of the same wrenches over and over again. We need the 2, we need the 3, we need the 2.5, we need the 4. And this is the particular reason why I like the I like the 06 speeds probably a tiny bit more than the G7s. because of this. The G7s had this whole apparatus arm that went over to cover the on-off switch, which was kind of nice because it just looked cleaner because the switch was covered. But then you had to get a little Allen key in the side and pull the thing off from there. And it was just a pain in the ass. This one slips off much nicer and just easier. Isolate the wires, slip them through. The back should just slip off. There we go. Slips right off. Come on, baby. So that's holding on there pretty damn good. For no particular reason. Damn. She's on there. Pull the last pin. That was kind of nice because the rams are don't have to be adjustable anymore. Because how they set this up, so you can just do a pin instead of the special tool for the ram specific tool. These rams are just nice. I mean, they're not rebuildable per se, but just the quality difference. When you pull one of these rams and you kind of put a little side load on it and you feel it and you just hear it, it's so smooth compared to like the A1 rams from China. Those are basically the same ram, it's just built somewhere else and it just lost its quality doing it. But yeah, these are just such a smooth ram. I always found it interesting how there's nothing truly sealing this pressure until you get here at the end. So it's kind of venting a little bit at the rearward stroke, but they were still fairly efficient even doing that. It just helped speed up the forward stroke, which was nice. This is a little feature of the Angel. I got a stuck-ass solenoid. Alright. A little screwdriver and pry it. There we go. She was just really on there. The pins were very, very nicely set up on that one. Let's take a look at the gasket underneath of it. Nothing crazy, just a gasket. All right, I'll push the valve or push the valve out the front. Let me grab a squeege. When the valve's out, alright, we're back. Sorry about that. God, I don't know where we left off there. I just pulled the valve out. They switched over to aluminum with the valves on the G7s, which a nice thing they did, especially in this generation, is they didn't leave the whole thing aluminum. The actual wear portion where the stem is, that's still a pressed in piece of stainless. Which is nice. It's a decent fit. The way this is set up is very nice, so it's just an inlet like that. Just a very nice valve in general. It's one of the nicer valves of the time for just a pure poppet valve marker. And it was just a good setup to me. Very nice setup. These guns have very little kick. They just feel really nice shooting this model Angel. It's definitely the top of the list, I would say, of pre or post LCD Angels that you want. I would pick a G7 or an A4 Fly absolutely very easily. 05 speeds are really good too. I'm saying G7, this is an 06 speed. 06 speed G7 is the same marker. One is an LCD screen. One does not. I mean, the G7 has a couple more features of it, but the markers are identical how they operate. The parts that they have inside of them, they're basically just identical. So call it what you will. Alright, so I'm going to start heating up my ultrasonic cleaner. Going to douse this down with some soap, put it in there, clean up most of the stuff, then we'll start seeing the reassembly video of it, and we'll go from there to shooting and tuning, and get it ready to go, get it ready to send over to my buddy. Alright, out for right now. Alright, and we are back now. So the markers went through, or the GATT has went through the ultrasonic cleaner. It's all clean now. I made sure I wiped everything down with my isopropylene alcohol. Other little things I did is I polished up the shaft of the LPR. It's just one of the things I like to do with these markers. Because the guy I'm selling this to lives down in the Florida Keys, incredibly salt water everywhere, so incredibly salty air. I'm replacing all of his screws with stainless steel alternatives, all 3/16 stainless screws, minus for the high pressure regulator, the mini reg, because I really can't just get that screw. I don't have that one. So every other screw is going to be stainless in this marker, just to help make it a longer life on the marker, give it increase its longevity. Yeah, he's down in Florida. I'm no stranger to salt water up here, living on the Jersey Shore, so it's really not much different of a condition, but yeah, the screws will get kind of grody through time. So switching over to stainless ones. Besides that, the height difference isn't much different, so whatever I set this for here, as far as velocity, it's going to be pretty consistent what the velocity he'd get down there would be. So we're going to start assembling the body. That back together. This fell off during ultrasonic cleaning, so we have to glue that back in. I pulled the 2 BA screws out of here. We're going to readjust them. That's going to be the first thing we do, is we're going to adjust the position of our Roto-breech. Now we want to push it as far forward as possible. That's because we want to make this gap up here super small, because air can escape through this gap. So the smaller we make this, the better it is. We might want to make this stiff, because as I was telling you earlier, put your thumb on this, you gain velocity. I want to try and make it so we're not losing all that extra air. So we're going to stiffen this up as much as we can. The 2 threads here, you got to be careful with. They are standard thread. There's some weird ass British thread they were doing. They're all standard, but they're not actually standard sizes. It's very strange. Very hard to find them in stainless. So I went too far forward on that one. Let's give it a little back pressure. Come on, baby. See, that's just a problem with the tool deflection. When they machine this piece, it's not perfectly straight up and down, so you always hit up here for some reason. Just because this is where the tool's deflecting when they're milling it. So you lose a little bit. If I was ever going to re-anno one of these, I would definitely sand this down to be nearly perfect, as perfect as I could make it. Just to make the best product you can. Almost. So we're still touching a little bit. I don't want to wear off all the anodizing up there, because it is a pretty clean marker still. It's nearly as perfect as it can be. A little too tight. Loosen the back up slightly. If we look at it in the light, it's a shame. We do got to push it forward. Whatever we do, we got to push it forward. Quarter turn. Push it forward a bunch now. Sounds like it's making contact, but it's not. It's making contact in the back. Oh, this thing's not machined to the standard I kind of expect it to be. Now it's hitting in the front. Alright, so I like where it is. Just got to tighten her down. But as good as that's going to be, unfortunately these keep loosening up. I'm kind of disappointed with WDP how they did these. I've put Loctite on, but I hate putting Loctite on these things because people just strip them out. See that? Watch what that does to my Allen wrench back here. So that's just twisting that. That's upsetting. Not happy with that. Another thing that bothers me with these is you can still see the saw cut marks on the back of this. This was an extruded 3/2 piece, and this gets saw cut back here and then gets finished milled. But they didn't really even care to fully make sure all the tool marks were gone. Which I understand, this is the speed version, this is the lower end model. So maybe the G7's better, but we'll double check. I never actually noticed that before till right now. But that's kind of shitty looking at that machining wise. All this part looks, it's kind of hokey too back here. Again, you got a little of the saw cut marks on this here because this back plate goes on it. So it covers it up so you don't see it, but it's just kind of junky. It doesn't make a nice tight fit the way it's supposed to be, or the way I'd expect it to be for an expensive marker. Just things you notice when you're putting them together though. Alright. That's set about as good as it's gonna be. I'd like to make that better, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel right now. Put the feed neck in, make sure you thread it right. Hand tight's good. So now we'll throw the solenoid in, we'll get that wired up, and we'll get the rest of the body wired up, put all the body pieces in first. Then we'll build out the HPR, we'll build out the trigger frame, and the whole thing will be together. So we'll start with our top housing, our solenoid. Let's just pop the gasket off gently. Give it a little grease. Let's make sure the gasket goes on the right way. All the holes line up right. So if you look down there, your long one goes this way, so that has to go like this. Just seems just to make sense pretty easily. The wires are all jammed up a little bit, so feed the wires down first. Grab my little O-ring pick and lost it. Alright, so that's just weird. and gently get the wire through the body. Right. Get the 2 pins lined in, drops down. I did like how they did this. It's a little more robust than the 8.4 models previously. Let's slide that in. You get rid of this Allen key because that might cause some problems down the line being a standard. This one's a 2.5 millimeter. Yep. So don't gotta be super forceful, just enough to make it seal. But we're good with that. So let's get the ram in. We'll get the back plate on. So the ram I just cleaned off. You can't get inside these without getting this pin out by somehow dremeling this back, getting a little magnet, getting the pin out. Then you gotta drill it out and make a little spacer, or a little threaded, not a threaded, but yeah, just a spacer to get in there. So it's a pain in the ass. There's no reason to. It is feeling good still. They are rebuildable, but it's a big process. So you can give it some lube up the static O-rings on it. And we're going to lube this up too. Spin it when you're putting it in. Try to get that lube to break the seals. There's really no seal there. We get our oil out. Got some PTFE in this oil, so I want to shake it a little bit, make sure it's distributed. Now I'll put some oil in the back and pull it forward. Now we're going to spin it up. Spin it back, put some oil in the front, put this out this way, and hit it backwards. Let the oil get sucked in there. Now it's spitting a little oil, which is good. Get rid of the excess. It's feeling really good now. Doesn't really matter if any oil's on the hammer. It's stainless steel. It doesn't care. Doesn't need any. So we're going to line it up for the pin. Make sure we're on the right side of the body. Gently slide it in. A little too far. Just get a long Allen. Way too far. It's hard to do being so far away from my face. Alright. I like to lube the pins a little bit just because they're steel. You don't exactly want to make these out of stainless. You do need that extra strength that steel gives you. Or you'd want it. You don't need it per se, but it's going to lube it up. Doesn't do anything besides protect it. Get my little tapping hammer. Not where I want it to be. I like to tap them in more than them just slipping in. It keeps a little more tension on the pin so it doesn't fall out as easily. It's just a preference. There's really no right or wrong way. Don't wail on the thing and you know, damage the aluminum piece. But if you just tap on it with a little hammer like this, you're not going to cause it any problems, and you're going to make it so it's just a little sticky when it's in there, which is what you want, so it doesn't just slide out when you're pulling something off the marker. Alright, so now we did that. We'll do the LPR next. I gotta get some more shims because those are a little grody looking. I'm going to lube the internal O-ring there. Again, I polished this shaft, and then you gotta clean the shaft. You have to make sure you get all the polishing wax off of it, so that's what the isopropylene alcohol is for. And just wipe the shit out of the thing to make sure. And yeah, that's just a beautiful action right now. Very smooth. So let me grab some shims. Be right back, they're in the other room. Alright, got the shim pack. Yeah, I'm not sure why those are so, why they're rusted. No idea why rust even would get in there. But we're just going to set it to what it was right now. We'll check it later. We want it to be probably around 55 to 60 psi after it's all said and done. But the shims go down the bottom. There's only 3 springs here. This one goes up like this. That one goes there, and this one flips up this way. And it'll be assembled like that. I'm going to replace this O-ring with a quad ring. It's because it's a little better performance for a dynamic O-ring. It's an easy one to do. Grab all the quad rings right now. A little pause. Alright, got my quad rings out. Forgot to put those out in the first place. If you see my last video about the LCD, I like the quad rings. They're a little bit better for dynamic friction. They break away a little easier, so technically it makes it a little faster. So it makes the LPR react a little bit faster. It allows it to, which is kind of nice. Nice little extra bump for no real cost if you have the rings. It's just one of those nice little things. Eke a tiny bit more performance out of it. Some lube on it. I like to put oil with all the stuff just because Angel's, it's an oil-based mark for the most part. I use the regular grease for stuff that's longer wear, but you know, like to oil the Angel. So the LPR, again, because it's a low pressure Angel, goes in this tube here. And the pin sits about here. So we line it up. Make sure the shims get in there. All the springs. Let's make sure we're where we're supposed to be. Feels kind of okay. Let's get another pin out. Again, lube the pin up. Try to keep the rust off of it. That pushed in nice. Didn't have to even tap it in. So the LPR's in. We have the hammer in and the ram. We're going to do the valve, get the front closed up. We can put this, remember with this one, there is a difference between the 2 front caps. The one that has this little bevel at the bottom, this is for the valve. The one that's flat, this is for the LPR side. We're going to grease up the O-ring and the threads, because it doesn't hurt to have the threads with a little grease on them. We need our number 4, our 4mm hex key. And gently start it. We're going to have to take this off later with the LPR pressure tester. But for now, close up the side. Nothing can get in it. Alright, so now we're going to put the valve together. The valve is together basically. O-rings are in great shape. They're not that old really. Going to just put a little oil on them, or a little grease on them rather. Put a dab of oil on the cup seal. Spin it around a little bit. Push the spring down. Give it a dab. Won't really do much, but better be safe than sorry. The valve goes in this tube. Make sure we're lined up. We're gently going to press down on it. So it does hit a backing with this one, which is nice. Third pinhole's back here. And, oh, I missed. So luckily we can look up here. We can line it up with this. With the obnoxiously long slot. Grab our third pin. Give it a little grease. Slips in too. Alright. So, this is a tiny bit tricky. We got to make sure this stem in here is pretty straight. It's not even doing that. Pull it out. You got to make sure it falls into the hole in here for it, so it has that point of contact. Let's get a little grease on this and the threads. Start it by hand real quick if we can. I don't want to tip the gun the other way because I don't want the stem shaft to fall out. Alright, that's in there. Check our work. Yep, valve stem is in there. See if I can get you more light. Open the hammer up. Alright. Let's put the back plate on. We'll get this glued back in place. And the body will be pretty much done. We'll build the HPR, we'll build up the trigger frame, we'll put all the wires back in place. And you know, get ready to start shooting. So next we'll take the back cap. Now I had to polish this up, the on-off button. For some reason it was getting kind of grody. Something was decaying it, so yeah, I'm not too happy with this. Is a different one than the older ones that they're using. Don't know the brand product, but wasn't super happy with that. So with these, up and down is on and off. The older Angels were left and right. It doesn't exactly matter, but it's just nice to do it the way they intended it. So this is the switch. Backwards. Got a kind of dead 9-volt here, but let's just we get a fresher 9-volt. Try to turn it on, make sure we're going the right way. Alright, brand new 9-volt. So it's on that way. I want it to be off downwards. Just going to keep twisting it. Just make sure it looks good. So down is off, up is on. Perfect. Gently take the wires out. Pull the battery out. Ugh. So now I just feed this through, make sure the wires go through first. Sitting right there. Get our little pick. Get that through. Another bolt we're switching out for stainless. It's 2mm. Okay, you don't got to tighten any of that stuff down real hard. Just tight enough. Okay, so now because my hands are a little greasy, we got to glue this back in. Let's get the isopropylene out. Isopropyl, rather. Make sure that's clean. Nice clean mating surface. Make sure my hands are clean. Make sure the back end of this is clean. Let the air set off on that a little bit. Let me grab my glue. Now my preferred glue is Loctite 411. It's a super glue that has a little bit of vibration resistance, impact resistance kind of glue. So a little dab will do you in here. Not too much. Press that in. Close on itself. Seal shrunk a little bit. Didn't get enough glue up here in the corner, which is okay. Pull that back. Press it in there nice and well. Make sure you're not putting tons of this glue in there. You don't want to glue all the you don't want to glue the marker together. You don't want to glue your hands to it. All right. Check it. Nice and stiff, nice and good. All right. So that's back in place. The body is basically together, so we're going to put this off to the side for right now. We're going to start with the HPR. Then we'll put all the electronics in it and get it fully together to go. Get those out of the way. Just got our cartridge. Got our old Angel stuff there. Alright. So first I want to change out the O-rings on this. I don't like the poly O-rings for longevity. They are nice O-rings, but the longer you have them on there, the more gummy they become. Take out the poly O-rings. I have quad rings to put on these as well. The top ring's a number 12 and 012. The bottom, I believe, is a number 8. Let me double check that. It might be off. Might be a 6. Yeah, it's a 6. I'll be right back and get some 6s. Where are you, you bastard? There you are. Alright, so 6 quad ring down here. These are both dynamic rings. I don't polish this because it's just really not necessary. It doesn't actually rub on anything. The rings do all the rubbing, which is kind of another reason this isn't a great reg, but it is what it is. The lube looks very nice on this, actually, so... Oh, no. Screwed that one up. Alright. So make sure the stack is correct. If you have to go back to the manual and look, please do. It is in the manual for the marker. So that's stacked up together. We're going to get rid of this poly O-ring as well, just so it doesn't become gum in a couple of years. Going to use just a 50 durometer 006 O-ring back here. There's no real reason to use it, besides it's just soft and easy to put on. It seals kind of nice. Doesn't really do much besides seal. It's all it has to do. Just push all the O-rings over. Get them out of our way. Alright, so first thing to drop in here is the ball bearing. Just make sure there's no crud on it. Make sure it just looks good. Drops right down. We're going to put a little lube on the back O-ring here. Make sure we put this in with the reg seat up. Take an Allen and just gently push it down. Alright. Now the piston. I'll lube it up. You can put a decent amount of lube on these. They're not super finicky just because there's a lot of pressure going through them. But you don't want to be obscene with it. Some oil. Let's put the oil with it too. Make sure it's down. Good. Oh, look at that. The ball can slip out. Be careful where the ball is. Get the crud off the C-clip. Fine, put the C-clip back in. and the reg's rebuilt. Let's get some lube on the outer O-rings, the sealing rings, just the statics. Maybe that's why they had so much lube on that ball bearing, so it wouldn't fall out all the time. Real, not a great looking ball bearing either, honestly. I mean, I expect better, but so we got to line this up. There's this pinhole here that is for that front screw, and then this has to correlate with this side here. So we're gonna put that like that. Whoa, almost a big mistake. This has to be on the marker. So we take this thing that should be an O-ring, but it's definitely mashed up into a special shape now. Which I always hate that because it's harder to get those parts later. Yeah, this definitely has to be on the marker or else we can't put it back on. So grab the small screw first for the flash tank just to line it up. This is the 3mm. Next, again, we're switching over to stainless, just because. Not a super easy screw to put in. We give this a little snug down, nothing crazy. Just enough to seal. Again, front one, nothing crazy. Just enough. Make sure that's not loose. All good. So now we put this in. Make sure it's lined up, looks good. Gotta push the ball bearing down. Number 3. Just going to push it all the way in to start. Make sure you can get through the back end so that's lined up nice and well. Put the other screw in. I don't exactly know why this screw's here as well, but they had a reason for it, I guess. 2.5. I'm not tightening that down very hard at all. Just gotta put the bastard bottom piece on. There is an O-ring inset in here. Definitely want to lube that up. But I want to get my hands not greasy because I don't want to really tighten this thing with a wrench or anything. I want to hand tighten it so I can get it off in the future. Tight as it can go, just by hand. Don't crank it down. You have this screw here holding in, you have this screw here that's going to hold it in. Just has to seal. Then you have the macro line on it, so it really can't go anywhere. It's not going to back out or anything like that on you with this fitting. This marker's mostly together now. We have the frame to do with the eyes, so we're going to put the eyes on first. Put the eyes on, the covers, the detents, all that fun stuff. We'll slip the eyes in, very gentle, super gentle with the eyes. Make sure they go in their holes like that. Put the rubber piece on. That pins into the two little slots that it has. Just make sure it's set in there nice. No kinks, nothing crazy. Not hard, but just something to be cautious about when you do it. So that's in. We'll drop a detent. Put a spring. Now the carriers are one directional. Make sure it's pointed down like this. You can kind of just tell from how it has to sit on the platen. And there's a little hole for it over here, which correlates to this hole here, or this pin here. Just make sure we got the right screw set up and everything. You don't want to rock this thing accidentally, or else you launch the spring, can't find the spring, you lose your detent, and it's a pain in the ass. Or you do something stupid like that. There we go. Again, not super tight. Stick your finger inside, make sure the detent's acting correctly. Everything's good with that. Let's lock the other side down. So detents are in. Perfect. They're working very nice. The eyes are in place. So next we'll put the veneer wheel in. Make sure it's nice and flat and where it's supposed to be. So if you look, this has this little bump on the bottom of the sheet metal piece here. That's got to clip in this way or else it's just not going to lay flat. Make sure the wheel's clicking right. Everything looks good. So that's all in place. Make sure the pins are all set still. And now we can start putting the frame together and put that on. Let's put the back plate in. We're going to slip our board in. So this is kind of tricky to do. We want to put the trigger in the spot. Let me just put this off to the side here. Just want the trigger in place enough to make sure that it slips where it's supposed to slip. Okay, so that's where it's supposed to be. The board's where it's supposed to be. The pad over there is where it's supposed to be. Grab my screwdriver. Whoa, way too big. Grab my smaller screwdriver. There we go. Again, you don't gotta tighten these down very hard at all. Just gentle, it's all in plastic. So we want to put the trigger in. One thing I forgot to mention is these are open ball bearings. There's two tiny ball bearings in this trigger, but they're open bearings. You can see the tiny balls in there. So what you want to do is you want to just put a little dab of oil on it and roll it around a lot, and then wipe it off really clean, just so there's a little bit of oil inside, and just helps the trigger work a little bit smoother. So now let's fiddle around with this. With our new stainless hardware. So I got it in, and when I looked up, the camera was not recording. Pain in my ass. I'll tighten these down enough. Again, they don't need to be super tight. That's what the magnets are for, going in there. Ooh, lost the wheel. Just be gentle with this stuff. We're going to make sure that all the wires go through this way. Make sure we're not clipping any wires. Looks good. Put the rear frame screw in first just because it's easier. Your number 3, or 3 mil. I haven't tightened it down yet. Oh man, I forgot to do something. We'll have to do that in a minute. Again, not super tight. You don't need to make these super tight ever. Just tight enough to hold on. So something I completely forgot to do. Two things I completely forgot to do. I was replacing the body screws, the grub screws, with stainless ones as well. Which means I gotta pull this rag back apart because I'm replacing that body screw as well with it. Which is not fun, but I gotta pull the back plate off. But, you know, it's what you're doing. I'm gonna put some Teflon tape on it. I don't like that they're Loctited in originally. The Teflon will work fine. Yeah, we would turn this marker on, it's just going to whoosh air down the center of it. Alright, figure out what was wrong with the camera. It was out of batteries. That's why I was acting so shitty. So we got to put that screw in as well. Whoa. Put Teflon tape on it. All right, that seals up the center passage. Now, dangerously, the LPR passage is exposed to high pressure air right now, or the higher pressure air. We gotta fix that next. Listen to all the work we just did. It happens. I'm really happy I made this hand tight. So I really screwed myself. Jesus. Come on. Just a pain in the ass to take out all the time, man. If it was at least a good regulator, it wouldn't be so bad. But because it's a crappy reg, it just makes it that much more tedious. Right. So now that pinhole there, that is to transfer the low pressure air to the LPR chamber. We need to put this one in there as well. A little too much Teflon tape. Not a problem if you put it on the right way so it doesn't thread into the part. Just make sure it's flush. Feels pretty flush. Alright. Let's put this back together for the second time. Not too bad of an issue. It's better we figured it out now versus when the marker's airing up and it's just hissing pressure out of everywhere, and I'm not sure why. Put it in place. Just hoping that worked, but of course it gets stuck up in there. Try and do something quick. Rarely works out for you. Did it again. Alright. Wait, slow down, calm down. Just get it done. There we go. It's harder to do because I can't see what I'm doing, but snug it down. Snug that one down. That feels pretty nice. Slip the red cartridge back in. Front screw, velocity adjuster screw. All right. So we can adjust some of the breakaway magnet tension with this. With two of the set screws up there, you can adjust the travel. I like where that is though. I'll let him deal with it if he wants to do anything different. So let's get rid of this rat's nest we got going on here. And get it looking right. Jesus. So that's why they tied that off. Which might be the way to do it. Alright, let's open up the back again. And try to get the wires looking real nice. Reach in there. Oh, man. Just trying to gently pull the solenoid wires back in, because there's just a lot of extra solenoid wire for no real reason. So I'll put the switch plug that in. Take a small Allen, push it down, solenoid goes next to the switch. They're just being a pain in the ass right now. Now the eyes, there we go. That's looking nicer. Be very gentle with the eyes. Make sure it's in its slot. Push it down gently. Push it down too hard or off center, you're going to buckle this and you're going to break some wires and it's going to suck for you. try to... Get those out of the way. All right. Not super tight back there. Let's put the battery in. Turn it on. Little cold out here. It's dark out, so I can't really use the chronograph. I have a thing about, I have it about 300. The LPR, I don't think my video worked for it, so that was set at about 60 with the shims in it, and it rips. And of course. And the hopper's jamming. All right, got a little bit of air left. And new batteries in the hopper. Oh. All right, Angel GATT shooting beautifully.